everybody, it's me, John Ward, and I am back with another One Filmmaker, One Film. And today my guest is
Ian Mair. I am the owner of Moonlight Films.
What is Moonlight Films?
That's a good question.
Off to a good start.
Moonlight Films. Yeah, I've been, like I said before, I've been wondering for years what exactly we're doing. Now, Moonlight Films is a micro budget production company that my good friend and producing partner James Stevenson and I started officially back in 2012. And in that time, we have produced close to 20 feature films and a couple short films. And several have been picked up by bigger distributors and sent out on DVD all over the nation. And other ones are smaller and more in-house, and we distribute just through our own means. And we've got DVDs available out there, and we just try to keep making the best films we can with the resources we've got. So
yeah, and I like your films. So it's especially like Blood Clove, I thought was Cove was I liked both of those, and that was our first interview. It was when you talked about these two films here. Does that look right? Maybe I should put it more like that. There we go.
There you go.
So there's parts 1 and 2, and I really like the killer in it, how he has like the skull mask on. And so I really dug these, and so it was just like, oh, I need to get him on One Filmmaker because I really like these movies. And still got my fingers crossed for part 3. We've discussed part 3.
But I know.
I'm hoping.
I do too.
So, and part 2 here has Lloyd Kaufman.
Oh yeah, the legend.
Yeah, so it's pardon me, excuse me if I'm coughing or clearing my throat. My allergies are killing me, and just my throat is just sucking. And so yeah, I mean, I really dug these, and every once in a while, I'll watch something and I'll be like, I need to get this person, this filmmaker, on One Filmmaker, because I'm so happy with the films that they made. And because some people have asked me, what if you think if the film is bad? I'm not going to have the person on. I mean, if the film is bad, why? I mean, I guess I could try to find good things to say, but it's like, no, I would rather have films that, that I'm proud to have on, and obviously that the filmmaker's proud to have on.
Oh,
so,
well, thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, and so it's interesting between, Blood Cove and then Grim Reaper 1 and 2. Now, what's the difference? Like, how would you describe these differently between like the killers, the film itself? What makes each kind of stand out on their own?
In a word, the cost is different.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Big difference. I'm not pretentious at all about what we do. Sometimes things turn out great. Sometimes they turn out, less than stellar. The big difference between the two series really comes down to the cost of making each one and the time spent. It's not a secret. I mean, all of our films are cheap. There's no way around that. But it's a weird way to look at it. But in my own reasoning sometimes with things, as a lifelong fan of horror and growing up with like Universal monster movies, I always knew about like the A and B divisions at Universal. Back in the studio days, they would have these, James Whale was obviously in the A unit, and they would spend longer on these films. He would get the bigger stars, the bigger budgets, the more lavish sets. And then you would have, guys like Reginald DeBorg, who, a good filmmaker, would handle a lot of the B unit films. You would have half the shooting days as one of the A pictures, and you would get sometimes maybe one star, but not as many stars. And so you sort of had this A B tier. And as weird as it is, when we started Grim Reaper, I said the way I'm looking at this is almost for us. This is sort of maybe a B level, whereas maybe something like a Blood Cove or a Flesh Eaters or a Maker of Monsters would be more of the A's for us. Obviously not A's compared to bigger films. I'm saying within our own catalog of material, because Blood Cove was like an 8-day shoot. The first Grim Reaper was a 3.5 to 4-day shoot.
Oh wow.
So that's all of the Reapers were that way, and that's sort of how I've looked at it. As you go, you come up with a more streamlined story. The scripts are shorter, the run times are shorter, and so that's sort of how Grim Reaper was born. Is we thought, what could we do a little bit more efficiently, in terms of budget. And I mean, how this goes. You're a filmmaker too. Sometimes budget, you've got a little more to work with on this project, and you're sort of riding a high, and then there for a while you're in a lull where it's like, well, I don't have as much to work with, so I have to be more selective. With locations or with the amount of cast members or whatever. So Grim Reaper is almost like a scaled down version of a Blood Cove. That's about the best way I can explain how that was birthed. So
yeah, it's interesting with like those old Universal movies is like they would shoot, let's say, Frankenstein or Bride of Frankenstein during the day, and then they would bring in those B people at night on the same sets. And it'd be like, okay, we gave James like James Will like a 12-hour day. You're going to get like a 6-hour day, but you can use all the Frankenstein sets.
Right.
And
right. So that's how they looked a little, better than what they probably would have,
Right. And I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that you call like Grim Reaper a, like kind of like the B, while Blood Cove is like the A. Because I think these are very well made, and compared to a lot of things.
Hey, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and it's especially, pardon me, when I do like one Filmmaker, I'm analyzing these. I'm looking at everything. I'll go like these are, like an hour, like a little over an hour, and it will take me like 2 hours to watch them because I'm going back and I'm going back, going forward, going back, going forward. I'm like, okay, how did they do this axe effect? Or wait, was that a continuity error? And I'll look at that and I'll make notes on it so I could talk about it. And I really didn't find any of that type of stuff in here. So I think that these are, compared to a lot of other independent or micro budget films, I think these are very good. The sound is good. The picture is good. It's in focus. The editing is good. So, I mean, that's why I don't think I had an issue with rewatching all of them. And it was great watching them back to back. So,
good.
Yeah, so I could see, which we'll get into, is that I could see these kind of like, does the ending of this one connect to the beginning of the next one? And so, that type, and I really liked it. So I think that these are, I don't consider these to be B. I don't.
Good. But well, I mean, the idea was, don't make it look any cheaper than what we're able to do, but just, and it's different because, years ago I didn't have kids, and that in itself, I am busier now than I was 5 years ago. So it was no big deal back then to say, okay, for the next 3 Saturdays we're going to film, and then we're going to take a Saturday off, and then we're back on it again. It wasn't as big a deal, because you had, but when you've got a family, it does complicate it more. I mean, they're a blessing. I mean, no doubt, but it does cramp your time up, so you have to come up with ways to still do what you love to do on the side, but maybe be a little bit more efficient about it. So in addition to cost, there's that too. All the core members, most of our lives are more complicated now than they were, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So, that does add some complexity to it.
Is your wife like part of this? Like, is she kind of part of this movie making machine? Or is she more of a, do you really need to make another one? Or is she just like, yeah, let's make another one?
She's a rock star. My wife is, along with my mom and my dad. They're I'm very fortunate that how supportive that they've always been with this. I mean, my wife and I met in high school, and we've been together since we were 16 and 17.
Oh,
so,
wow. Congratulations
so
on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well,
yeah, that's rare.
Well, she's kept me around for this long. I hope I got a few more years out of it. But she doesn't want to really be on camera. She'll pop up occasionally in really tiny, she's in the First Blood Cove. She's at the desk in the yellow sweater typing and says, the boss is here, Joni, or there's a card for you or whatever, something like that. But behind the scenes, she's a lot of help because she will go through the scripts and questions in it. When I edit, I'll bring her in and I show her different scenes, and I have her look for flaws and how can I make this better. So on set, no, she's not there, but behind the scenes, she's very helpful with. So, like I said, before the show started, I wish sometimes that I would get these in front of her more often because she does notice errors and things, or sometimes, I miss the errors, so.
Excuse me. Well, I think that's great. So God, pardon me. I'm single. I don't have any kids. I've never been married. So I guess I can't use any excuses for not getting movies made. Because I do hear about families, like you and other people that still get it done, and I think that's an inspiration is to say, wow, if these guys have like a full-time job, let's say, and they got a family and kids and a wife, and they can still get movies made, then there's really no excuse to not making movies.
Well, you know how it goes. There's a lot more that goes into this than what people realize. And whether you have the kids and all that or not, it's still a lot of work to get it put together, no matter what walk of life you're in. It's a lot. There's a lot more to it, because even sometimes the people on set, I don't think they realize, we may have put in a 13, 14-hour day, and when you have all that footage, just how much time that takes to put together when you get back to the computer and you edit it. I mean, I couldn't imagine the hours spent right here in this room editing all this stuff. How many hours? I mean, there's way more time here in editing than there is on set,
Oh, yeah. Filming is almost the easy thing. It's once you get it, and luckily through digital, I mean, it's so much easier because I'm 55. So when I went to film school, we were shooting on film, I think like up to like 16 millimeter. And then, you're constantly changing, the reels and you're editing on a flatbed. And we had to send, because I was in Northern California. So you'd have to send all your footage into San Francisco to get it developed. And there was always that chance that they were going to screw it up. And a few of my things had film scratches, and it's just digital is so much better. I would never shoot on film again, never. Just knowing what a hassle that was.
Well, I know that George Stover and I have talked about that before, out when we filmed in Baltimore with him, and then on the phone here a few weeks back, we were talking about that too, because he's a lot older than you are, but he has that experience with film as well, and all the splicing and everything. And he said the same thing, that although it's it is a lost art and it's important. He said, I don't know how we could go back to that now after being spoiled with with digital.
Yeah, I think it's crazy when I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, we shot this on film." Why? Why?
Yeah. I mean,
No.
it does. It has a look. I mean,
Oh,
that's
it does. Yeah.
inarguable. It has a great look to it. But, but yeah, I couldn't imagine all the time spent with the digital. I couldn't even. Yeah, I'd be making about one movie every 10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's way too expensive. It's just to get all
Yeah,
that stuff
well,
done. And
Moonlight couldn't afford it. Oh,
yeah, I don't think any of us at this point could afford it. I mean, when we can even use our phones to now
yeah,
shoot on that, and you do have professional filmmakers, out there, Academy Award winning filmmakers who shoot on their phone.
yeah.
Especially with like the the iPhone and stuff. So it shows that they don't even want to use film anymore. They'd rather use their phone.
It's incredible how far it's go. We had a shot one day we could not accomplish with the camera, and we tried it a couple times and it didn't work. And James said, "Well, let's just film it with my phone. I've got a slow mo, uh, whatever a capability on that phone." And he turned it on and just propped it up and got the shot, and it looked great. So and you can't tell which shot it is in the movie that went from the the Canon that we used to the phone. It blended well enough that you couldn't tell.
Yeah, we used a Canon, but I'm not sure like an LX or something on AXEMAS. And I
Uh-huh.
noticed that we needed some shots, some like B-roll stuff. And since I worked at the storage facility that we shot at, I just went around with my phone, as I was walking the property
Yeah.
to make sure everything was okay. I just, I took my phone and just said, "Oh, let me get a shot of the hallway." And just to cut to, like, if I need to cut to
Right.
something,
Oh, sure.
oh, just film the hallway. Now I'll flip around and shoot this hallway. And then, oh, let me get a
Yep.
light. And you cannot tell at all the difference
Yeah.
between just my
I
phone.
didn't know. I've seen it a couple times, and it's been a
Oh, thank you.
while since I've seen it. But yeah, it looks great.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I have good guys shooting it, and part 3 should look even better because Joe Lujan is shooting that one, so that's going to look
Oh
great.
wow.
Yeah, so I'm
So
very excited about
how
that.
how soon you may have posted that? How soon are you guys starting part three?
Well, I had to completely rewrite the script. So 3 and
Oh,
4, which were funded together and were supposed to be shot back to back. This is, of course, before COVID and all that. Part 3 was supposed to be the end of the trilogy, and it was supposed to take place at a different storage facility, the one that I was at that fired me, and didn't give me a reason why. They just said, "Yeah, you're not a good fit anymore." And then they let me go, and I'm like, "Wow, I've been doing this for 8 years. I'm no longer a fit." Okay,
that's
whatever.
crappy.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I had to completely
yeah.
rewrite it,
I'm
and then
sorry.
no, it's probably for the better anyways. So, but thank you. And so I had to find some other place to at least shoot part 3. And Steve Hansen out here in Vegas, he has a property that's up in Pahrump where we shot Meat Massacre 4. So we're gonna shoot at his place. And
Okay.
then part 4, I have to rethink because it was meant to be like Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, where it's 2 people, a guy and a
Okay.
girl, and
Uh-huh.
they're talking about the first 3 films. And then she ends up being like the niece or daughter of Drew Marvick's Santa. And she's trying to kill
Mm-hmm.
the guy who ends up being related to Sarah or Ashley Campbell, that character. So there would be like 20 minutes of new footage and then like 10 minutes of flashbacks. Well, I can't do that now because it took place at a storage
Right.
facility. So now I have to rethink
Oh,
part
yeah.
4. And so it's been a little difficult. So hopefully soon, I'm hoping. So
Yeah.
it's the money is still
I
there.
hope so too.
Thank you. Yeah,
Well,
because
good.
I want to
Good.
get those things done and just move on to other stuff. I would like other people to work on them. Kind of make it a franchise, and whoever wants to
Mm-hmm.
make part 5, 6, 7, 8 can do it. Short,
Right.
feature,
Oh,
whatever they
sure.
want to do, as long as it just fits within that AXEMAS, storyline. So yeah.
I
But
think that's a cool when you get different filmmakers handling. It's always fun to see what they come up with, when it's different people doing that.
well, would you be scared if somebody said, hey, I would like to make Grim Reaper 4? What rules would you have? Like, if you said, okay, you could do it, like, what would you tell them? Like, would you send them like a list? This is kind of the Bible, and you need to follow these things.
I would tell them I'm going to sit here with my coffee and then take a nap, and they can have it. No, I don't know. That's a I've done interviews by myself, and we've done interviews as a group, and I don't think I've ever been asked that way before. I would be up for it if there were filmmakers that would want to take it on. I think that this series would lend itself well to that, because of course the big thing is each one kind of has a little bit of a different look. You do have a different actor each time playing the killer, so you've already set that groundwork.
Going to ask that. Yeah. Is that on purpose?
So,
or is
yes, that was a conscious decision, and I can get into that now, or whatever works later, or whatever. However you want to.
No, we could let's finish what we're doing, because I would find it. I find it interesting what somebody else would do, because I know what I would do if somebody wanted to take on AXEMAS 5.
I think that the big thing would be, get creative with it. Stay tonally maybe similar. I'll come right out and say, if it got too gratuitous, I would not be comfortable with it. Moonlight tries to stay classy's not maybe the best word, but just we don't get into too many of the exploitative elements. I would want to maybe stay away from that. I know a lot of filmmakers are comfortable with it. I'm really not. With my, I don't care to watch it, but with my own stuff. And we can get into the gore and all that later. With these films, I have thoughts on that. But as far as somebody else handling it, I don't know, just take it in a different direction, come up with some new locations, maybe get away from the woods a little bit, find, I don't know, a warehouse or something. Maybe stick with a little bit of the mythology, but try something new, because even with Victor Cunningham in 3 films, I told the guys a while back, if we did a part 4, we would want to move it in a different direction, and get a little bit more supernatural, or do a copycat killer, or sort of somebody carrying on the legacy of the guy, something like that, and not just continue to do the very same type of thing. I think I wouldn't say exhausted, but part of it too, with that, I think you've got different filmmakers, you're going to have new people to look at each time. You're going to have new cameras being used, or just new techniques altogether. So I think that could help keep it fresh if you had different filmmakers doing, which is, I think that's one of the reasons I think Camp Blood, that series that David Sterling does, has been, interesting to watch, and I'm a big fan of that, because every movie is just totally different than the one before it. So
well, it's interesting
which can be good, and sometimes it's not as good, but it's fun regardless, because you can see here's the basic idea and how all these different filmmakers attack that.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I had talked to David about doing a Camp Blood film, and at the time when I was talking to him, I was out here in Vegas, but I didn't really realize that Mount Charleston was so close, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes at most. And it's all woods. Like, you would never know that it's Vegas. But at the time I didn't realize that. And I said, well, what about Camp Blood in the desert? What about just shifting it from the woods to the desert, almost like a Hills Have Eyes, but with clowns? And he just,
right.
Nope, nope, gonna stay to the woods, gonna stay to the woods. And so, but from what you're telling me is that you would be interested in, okay, let's take it out of what you've done and move it to someplace else, which to me is always interesting. I don't want to see Michael Myers going around Haddonfield again. Give me something new. I say that, but yet I hated the last Halloween movie.
Yeah.
But it's like, I like Hellraiser in space. I'm a big fan of Hellraiser 4. I put Jason Voorhees in the snow. Yeah, I mean, I take something and just move it. And having something like Jason Voorhees just in the same place over and over and over again, even though I think they failed with Takes Manhattan because it was Takes Canada. But if you had him in the snow, even though it was like Camp Crystal Lake, blood looks great on snow. And that would be very interesting to have him frozen in the lake. Somehow he bursts out and starts taking on all these skiers and stuff like that. But it seems like, yeah, some people just want to stay with the same and some people want to move it. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, even with this in the 3 movies, and I'm sure you've noticed that, you know, the first one is very green. It's a lot, and there's a lot of woods. In the second one, it looks more rural. You see people in overalls. There's hay bales and barns, and
lots of overalls.
And then swampy. Yes, two is no kidding. Yeah, that wasn't really a direct, that was just what they showed up in, which is fine. But you know, and then the swamp, we used our local goose pond area a lot for 2. So in 3, I went a little more small town, where you see the scene where he goes from a woodsy area and walks into town, and then the rest of the film is set in town. You see people in garages and alleyways and things. So even just in the 3 films here, whereas Blood Cove, it's very much the same thing from 1 to 2. It looks the same. It's the same town. It's the same, you know, it's the same police force. You know, even though the characters don't really overlap, it's very much of a piece. Whereas Grim Reaper, that was a decision I made really early on, that each movie we were trying to give it its own style, its own identity. Even the aspect ratio is different in each movie. The first one is 185, the second one is 166, and the third one is 178. So not a huge difference there, but your picture is a little different per movie. And then the second one is a little more washed out. The colors in the first one are really vibrant. And then 3 looks the most probably natural, you know, of the 3. Like skin tones and all look a little more normal in 3. So if different filmmakers did that, that would come a little bit more organically, because they would be in a different place with different people and different cameras. You know, so anyway.
Yeah, it's, you know, having other people take things on, like to go back to Camp Blood for a second. If you're not a fan of that filmmaker, you're going to be like, oh, and then if they like make like a second one, then it's like, oh, I don't know about this. So that's something.
But then you wait one other film and it's someone totally new, you know. So
yeah, it's you're kind of, I don't know. It's when you have, I think, so many people working on it. You
yeah, well, and that's true too.
You know, because you all,
it could almost get to be a Frankenstein of a series too, you know.
Yeah, with your each part looking different and yeah, it's one arm could be muscular and while the other arm could be really thin and weak, and you know, it's like you just don't know. I mean, that's what that was what I wanted to do with like the AXEMAS stuff, is on each film I wanted a different DP, which we've done, and then I want a different guy doing the music, you know, which so far we've done. And so each film does have its different looks, but then both films have things that I don't like that the DPs did, that I was kind of convinced to do. And
Mm-hmm.
now when I talk to Joe, when we've watched both of those films back to back, I'm like, this is what I don't want to do. This is what I want to do. I don't want to do this. Yeah, don't do that either. Don't do that. And so he kind of knows where I'm at with that. So yeah, I guess it just has to, you know, I always, when I'm putting together, and God, it's taking so long and people are annoyed with me, but I have a cosmic horror anthology. There's volumes 1 and 2, and I just need a couple more things to finish it. But what I did was I put the thing out on Facebook, like an ad saying, hey, I'm looking for people to shoot these kind of cosmic horror films. If I didn't know who the filmmaker was, because like one of them is Joe Sherlock, another one is Ron Ford, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I know their films because I've watched them before. So there was no problem with that.
Right.
Oh yeah, you want to make one? Go ahead.
Right.
But if I wasn't familiar with the filmmaker, I'd be like, okay, I would like to see something and
Right.
see if you kind of get what what I'm doing here. And I did actually turn away a couple people. So
Yeah.
the
Well,
people,
if the styles don't match, and you know that's not, it's not a knock on them personally. It's just the styles don't jive. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, maybe somebody doesn't know really what cosmic horror is, or H.P. Lovecraft, or that type of
Right.
thing. It's because cosmic horror, it's not easy. It's not,
No, no,
it's something.
we've never really attempted that specifically,
Yeah, it's a tough. Yeah, so it should be interesting. So, well, I have right here the two parts 1 and 2.
Okay.
Where's I can't seem to get the third one. Where's the third one?
Oh, here. There it is.
There's part 3. All right. So when can people get part 3? Look at that cover.
Part 3 should be available in, let's say, 2 weeks. Let's say in end of September, or middle end of September. I still have to watch the proof copy. Life's been really hectic lately, and I've not had a chance to watch the proof DVD that we got. But once I clear it, I can activate it online, and then it will be available. So
Is that through? Because I think your stuff is through Kanaki.
yeah, these are all of our in-house uh, films that we distribute are through Kanaki. Yes.
So you could probably, yeah. So you'll probably get it through that. Because
At
yeah,
one
because I
point they all were, but
yeah, I definitely want to get a copy, and I thank you for letting me be part of part 3, and so
oh,
it is
absolutely.
I have my list. I have my bucket list of filmmakers that I want to work with, or like a series I want to work with, and I think it's so awesome when people let me do it, because I don't consider myself an actor. I for me it's
You
more,
did great.
well, thank you. And I love that my little voice part on the radio. And so I really thank you for letting me be in part 3. And there are just certain series or certain filmmakers that I really want to work with. And you're one of them. So and so whatever
Well,
film you could
and hey,
fit me into, I was happy.
and I apologize about that back end, but I'm sure, as you could see in that scene, the scene was over, where the radio was, and I'm like, you can't just continually cut back to a shot of the radio on the bench. And I thought, so I didn't want to lose those last few lines, but there was really just not a good place to put that at the end. So the convert, but I think your warning at the end, where you say, something to the effect of, like, he's out there, it's not a joke, and I wouldn't take too kindly to what you were saying. I think that's sort of a foreboding way to end it. So although I'm disappointed we didn't get the last 3 lines or 4 lines you had, and the last 3 or 4 lines that Gil Wilson had, I think it still ends well enough that it leads into more of the killer on the loose. So
You actually contacted me and said, hey, I'm sorry about this, but yeah, we had to cut out the last couple lines.
yeah,
I
I felt
appreciated,
like a jerk to write.
yeah, I appreciated that. So when I listened to it, I'm like, no, it works. It's fine. There's nothing,
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with that. And so I appreciate the heads up. There have been a couple of times where I've gotten dialogue that's like this, and I'm dyslexic, so it takes me a long time to memorize that stuff, and then it gets cut down to like that, and I'm like, oh man, I worked on this for like 6 hours, and where somebody could probably just memorize it in in no time, and then it's just like this little bit, and it's like, if I knew that, I wouldn't have memorized everything.
Oh, so, sure.
But
I never like when especially like you said, you get a big piece of work, to memorize, or you're planning for, and then something happens either on the day of, on set, or in editing, where it's like, well, crap, we had 14 pages to film today. They planned for 14 due to whatever, a location issue or a time thing or some sort of setback. We only shot 9, and the remaining pages won't be shot because we're never going to be back together in that, that group of people or whatever. And you do feel bad because they planned for that, whether it was, time spent memorization, or even just extra planning with clothing and things like that. It's still just like, it sucks when you don't get to use everything that you plan to do, but sometimes it happens.
It does. And the one thing that, like, I was in Joe Lujan's film Rust 3. So I started off, before I really knew him, is he put out a post on Facebook saying, hey, I'm looking for somebody to play a homeless person. And I'm like, ooh, me. And so I let everything, he said, okay, this is really before we knew each other. And so I let everything grow. I had gloves and I cut the fingertips. And I went to like a thrift store and I bought like an old overcoat, and I really made, and I put black on my face to make it look like I'm all dirty. And I really, and I even found like a flask, and I had the flask, and that was, I was so happy. Like, oh my God, I really worked hard on this. And we shot the scene, and then I ended up being in the movie as a different person by accident. So I'm Joe's sound guy. And so when we were shooting Rust 3, we were doing the sound, and I was holding the boom out, and the person shooting the film kept going back to me, and I'm then seen on film. So Joe's like, okay, well, I guess now you're a character in the movie. So so Joe's character is like an interviewer. And so now I'm like the interviewer in the film. So now I have like this big part in Rust 3. But he goes, but we're going to have to cut the homeless person, because now it doesn't match with you. And I'm like, yeah, but it's different looking. And he's like, yeah, but I had to kind of rearrange things. And I'm like, oh man, I worked hard on that homeless person. And I said, can you put it maybe in the deleted scenes, just so we have it? And he's like, yeah, if I could do that, I will. So under those circumstances, I got a bigger part, so I'm behind the camera and in front of the camera. And then hopefully that little scene will be in, in that deleted stuff. And that makes me happy. So it's like, yeah, there are circumstances beyond your control at times that just, but it's so sometimes it's just like, why am I memorizing this much dialogue if it's this much?
Well, and that's, that's the thing is, it's unfortunate when you do have to lose material, and that's why I wrote you, because I do take people's time and talent seriously, because no one's making big bucks on this stuff. Most of us don't make anything on it, so it's like, personally, most of these people are volunteering their time because they love it and they're part of the team, and they come back over and over again. So you don't want to waste people's time on material that you're not going to use, and even just, that old expression, hurry up and wait. We try so hard when we bring people in to schedule them to where you're not sitting around waiting. You come in at your call time, and that's, you'll start really shortly after that, a little bit of rehearsal per scene and go. And that way people aren't, everyone has, jobs, and everybody has
Sure.
or some of us have kids and some have spouses and some live far away. So you want to do is, so it is disheartening when you have to lose material. And and I know it is for the people that work on stuff. You worked on that homeless character and got all the the all the flask and all your supplies and things ready, your props, and then when it gets cut, it sucks, but sometimes it does happen and you can't avoid it.
Yeah, there was a good reason for it, and I understood it. And so, but once again, it was kind of like what you did, is that Joe explained, oh yeah, we can't
Right.
have that in here now because
Right.
it doesn't make sense to and there was something else that had to be cut with me as the sound person, because when we shot it, I'm already dead. So it doesn't make, there was no way of flipping the two.
Oh,
So it's like,
right.
no, we
Right.
got to cut this out, and because you're already dead in the movie. So it does make, it
Right.
makes sense sometimes. What I don't understand is, like, I will reach out to people like I did with you, and I said, hey, do you have anything for Grim Reaper 3? And you did. And I've reached out to people, and I'll be like, hey, I like your work, and I'd love to be part of this movie. And, I work for free. I don't charge anything at all. And can I be part of it? And then what I'll get back is, well, you can always go on to Indiegogo and buy the perk for $100. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
no. I'll buy like a
Yeah.
DVD or a
Yeah.
Blu-ray or something, but I'm not gonna spend
Sure.
$100 just to do, like a voice on a radio. It's like, that doesn't make sense to me. I mean, plus, doesn't that show that I
Yeah,
like you as a filmmaker? It's
right. No, I guess we did Indiegogo for Graveyard Stories, the first one, and I'll probably never do one again. I don't like getting all the stuff ready for the perks. It honestly drove me crazy, and it works really well for some filmmakers. They go back to it every time. They seem to have a good, just a good handle on that. It did not work for me. We tried it, and after the one time I was kind of done with crowdfunding. It just wasn't for me.
it
So
is work. It's
yeah,
more work
yeah,
to just do Indiegogo than it is to make the film itself. I mean,
yeah.
it is,
Well,
you.
and when you already wear so many hats when doing this, I mean, I've got a great team, a real supportive group of people that I gushed about everybody last time I was on, but it's like I don't need any more jobs at Moonlight Films. I have enough jobs to then to add Indiegogo onto it. It's just like, nah, it just didn't work for me.
Well, and I noticed on these three, on the Grim Reaper 1 through 3, it is all the same people working with you. It's all,
Yeah.
everybody, from what I can remember, maybe a couple people alternated, but it was for the most part all the same people on all 3 films doing the same jobs. And that's great to have, when you could just
Yeah.
call somebody up and go, hey, we're making part 3,
Yeah.
what's your schedule? And I thought that was,
I've got about 20 people. Depends. I mean, I've got 7 or 8 people that's like the I guess like the probably the closest to like a main group. And then of course it expands. You know how that goes. It's just like you have circles of friends or circles of people you work with or whatever, and that's like, but I've got a stable of people that I trust and who do a good job and who so we're very fortunate to have the people that we do. I mean, you got James Stevenson has been there since day one. Tara Bixler, who's the lead of 3 and she's in 1. She handles a lot of roles in addition to actress. She'll do makeup sometimes or costumes, and she's an associate producer on things. And Tara goes above and beyond. And Darren Morgan, does he's a fantastic actor, and he also does effects and associate producer roles and all sorts of things behind the scenes. And my brother, I mean, the list just goes on. And these people come back every time, and it's like, and I think you do get a sense of I call it the Moonlight Films family, because you know, I couldn't do it without all these people because it would just be me and my camera and my computer, you know. So
Right.
when you get a good group, it's like that, you know, that another old expression, you know, don't fix what's not broken. And I've got a good group. There's no reason to, you know, to, oh, we always like bringing in new people too. Don't get me wrong, but I like who we work with. So
Yeah, because I would think that, you know, looking at your credits for cast and crew, that it's like on Wednesday, one of your actors will be acting, driving a car,
right,
and then the next day they're doing effects. So
right.
it's just like, okay, well, where am I today? You know, oh, well, you drove yesterday, but today now
Sometimes,
you're going to do
yeah.
effects, that type of thing.
Sure. I mean, and some people are just they not just actors, but a lot of them, you know, that's their job is they come in, they act, and then they go. But they may bring their own costume, and they may allow us to use their vehicle, or hey, we can shoot it on my back porch or in my living room or whatever. That'll change it up a little bit, and it's like terrific. Let's shoot it at your house because, you know, when you work on such a low budget, you know, I don't want to use the word stuck, but in a way, you are stuck using a lot of the same locations. You know, I mean,
Right.
I can't count how many times we've used my house and my dad's house. Those are the two primary places we film because, and dad's got a big yard. There's a pond there, there's a woods, there's barns, and, you know, so there's a lot there to work with. And my house has got a lot of different rooms and things. So, you know, you can set things up that way, but it does get kind of stale, you know, when you have to go back to the same places over and over again. But then again, on the flip side, very, very fortunate that it's there that we can use it. So, you know.
Yeah, I think all of us realized, thanks to like Robert Rodriguez, that, and especially if you know, read his book, you know, The Rebel Without a Crew, that
Mm-hmm.
you, when you look at the pictures, you see the lead actor holding the boom,
Right,
or you
right,
see somebody out, like the a guy who shot a machine gun in the movie is holding up a reflector, and you're
right,
going like, oh crap, I don't have to have 100 people on set. I don't have to have
right,
just this person doing sound or just this person acting, that
right.
everybody can be involved in that. And I think that he's very important in independent filmmaking, in knowing that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and he's the guy who, and I've quoted this to other people, which is cut to the dog. And which is, if you watch at least the original version, I don't know how much it was in the release version, but in the one I think that showed at Sundance for El Marachi, is if there was a
Uh-huh.
continuity error or if he forgot to shoot something, he would cut to a dog on the street, and he called that cut to the dog.
Okay,
And so I've told
okay.
many people about cut to the dog, and which means you could cut to anything. You could cut to a car, you could cut
Sure.
to a house, you could cut
Yep,
to a television.
yep,
You just need those shots where it's like, crap, if that character goes from here to here, there's a problem. Oh, but if I cut to the
yep.
outside of the house, now this makes
Right,
sense. And
right,
so
right.
he's very important in the areas of indie filmmaking, and realizing that you can just have 8 people, 10 people, and they're doing
Well,
everything.
it's encouraging, you know, when you see a filmmaker who is so much more established and works on a lot bigger scale than what you know than what a lot of us work. It's nice to know that even when you've got all the resources, or a lot more resources at your disposal, that they still use a lot of those same techniques where they flip people in and out of roles to get
Right.
everything done, you know.
Yeah.
So,
So one, because you had brought this up not too long ago, which I want to talk about, is, so I noticed in the 3 films, so part 1, the credit sequence has kind of like that bloody look, and you're getting kind of like images of the Reaper, and the credits are going through it. And then part 2 has the drone shots, like going over
mhm,
like a marsh and stuff. And then part 3,
right.
we go back to the credits that are in part 1 again. Is that on purpose?
Um, well, I know, but part one like had the skull and then all the blood and all that stuff. Um, I think that with part three showing the pictures of one and two, it was just sort of a little way of recapping, I guess, the other things. This is the first one was just because I there's a haunted house about 15 miles from here. And they've offered to let us film there before, but they've got these really cool skulls on the outside of the building that were like, I guess, bought at Lowe's, but they're really heavy duty, and they've been like, I don't know. I don't know what the material is, but it's been like smushed up into the brick. So the skulls look like they're almost protruding from the brick building. And I
Huh.
just messaged the haunted house and I said, can I get a shot of that? And to be honest, that was shot for Blood Cove 1 or 2, whichever. I don't remember which. Was going to use it for a credit sequence, probably the first one. Because the second Blood Cove, the opening credits with the sun and the farm and all that, that was really a deliberate um, love letter to Halloween 4. So I'm assuming this was shot for part one. And I didn't end up using it because I liked the hatchet in the table with the old pieces inspired font and all that with the blood dripping off the axe from Blood Cove. So I think the skull on the haunted house was probably shot for credits for Blood Cove 1, and I didn't use it. So when I went to do Grim Reaper, I just be honest, I had that footage still that I hadn't used, and I thought, well, that looks kind of Reaper-esque. I can use that. With part two, that was just to show the just to set it up a little more, and of course you had the band, in the music, so it was sort of twangy and getting the style set up. But for part three, if you look at the overlay, the it's not blood, but it's like just a horror grungy background, kind of has a pinkish, purplish, reddish hue to it. If you go back and watch, I'm gonna see if I can get them right. It's Ghost of Camp Blood and Children of Camp Blood. Mark Polonia uses that exact same grunge background, which was from storyblocks.com, and he actually referred that to me maybe 2 years ago now and said, hey man, this is a great resource to pull stock footage from. So, and then the pictures changing are like Mark did in Ghost of Camp Blood and Children of Camp Blood. So the credits to part three are a tribute to two of Mark Polonia's Camp Blood movies. So
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if
Yeah.
anybody would catch that or not, but they look really similar. The font is not, but that grunge is the exact same grunge from Storyblocks, and then the pictures fading from one to the other are just like he did. So that was just sort of a shout out to Mark. So
Okay. Because I see, I was thinking is one, the like pre-credit kill type of thing is Bethany in the shower, and then
right,
you have those type of credits, and then in part three she's the main character, and you have those credits again, and I'm like, okay, is he somehow linking these with the credits? Because we never, at least what I don't think she's mentioned in part two. So okay, so maybe
oh
part two
no,
is its
no.
own thing, which is why it doesn't have those credits. I put a lot of thought
I
into
don't
this.
think it was. Well, I will, and that's great because your brain works like mine does. It sounds like where you maybe overthink little details, like as I do the same. Like you know, even just different font choices and things. Where most people would look at it and go, "I have no idea what this is for," but I'm like, "Oh, this is whole thought process," about this. I think one and three do feel a little bit more connected. And I mean, and there's a little bit of a reason for. I don't know if you want me to get into that now or wait till
Yeah,
we
please, because
discuss it.
it it reminded me of when you see. Okay, have you ever seen the Lake Fear movies?
Oh, where the middle one was made as something different.
Right. So so you had Lake Fear 1 and Lake
The
Fear
swamp.
3
Yep.
are made by the same
Yep.
people. And then part 2
Right.
has like nothing to do with any of them except that there's like crocodiles or something in it. And so I was almost
Right.
thinking, like, is that what James was going for? Was 1 and 3 connect? 2's kind of its own thing, but there is a character from 2, Caleb, who's in part 3, which I love.
Right.
I love when people connect stuff like that together. So was there anything like that? So yeah, please explain how that happened.
Okay. Well, in a nutshell, we when we started Grim Reaper as a whole, of course, I said earlier about the budget being a big part of why we went this direction. We were not real keen to pull the trigger on another slasher, to be honest, just because we had done that. We had done that with Blood Cove 1 and 2, and that took a while. And then when you do something and then you go right into, or shortly thereafter, into the sort of a similar topic, you do sort of run the risk of burnout, where it's like, okay, we've done this before. But guys with a knife and a mask, it is efficient. You can do it cheaper than, you don't have to have as many effects. You don't have to have as many, you don't have to have 5 creatures, in a building. You can have one guy with a mask and a weapon of some sort. So that was there. A lot of this was a budget, decision. So, you had one, it did its own, had story, it did its own thing. When we went to part 2, my initial concept was each of these would be dramatically different cast, different actor playing the Reaper. And that just, the idea was there. We had my brother Ben play the Skull, and those movies are very much married, and from the same cloth, but the idea with this is, okay, as to not totally just replicate Blood Cove, get a different guy every time. Same character, Victor Cunningham, but to keep him different, get a new guy, new build, new style, and do not tell him to mimic the guy before. This is your version of Victor Cunningham. You do it how you see fit, because none of the 3 actors move the same. They all have different little nuances they do. So when we did part 2, that was still the line of thought, was every movie, new cast, new people, new everything. But when you do this, you do have to pay attention to your viewership and budget and things like that. And although 1 and 2 had pretty respectable numbers, on YouTube, which is their only home right now other than DVD, they didn't go through the ceiling like something like Graveyard Stories or Fangs did for us. So when the thought was, okay, let's do 3, for the 3rd year in a row, let's do another one, I thought maybe we should wrap this up. Maybe this should be the last one, because it's almost like, how many times do you want to do something before you go, okay, this is not sticking maybe as well as we'd hoped? So you can't keep like that's a fool's errand to keep putting something out there, and if people are not flocking to it and you keep doing the same type of thing, at some point you have to pump the brakes and go, okay, let's be realistic. Are we going to get to part 9 with this? Maybe someday, but maybe not. So then I thought, well, what can we do to sort of link 1 and 2 a little bit? So Tara's very popular with our audience, and Tara's a strong actress, and she's a very good friend. So it's like, okay, we didn't see her die on screen. We saw a knife, we heard some screams, we saw some blood, but we didn't actually see her die. So she could have just been wounded. So it's like, okay, bring her back from part 1, which will really make that scene have more importance in part 1 when you watch them back to back to back. And then obviously the logical tie over from part 2 is part 2's main character, which is, Jed Bryan as Caleb Wilkins. So the thought for 3 was, how can we get these 2 characters into one movie kill off the Reaper at the end, because in horror you can always bring these guys back, and
Oh
then
yeah.
let it operate as a trilogy for a while on DVD and online. See the types of reviews you're getting. If the revenue and the audience continues to go up, maybe revisit it next year or in a couple years. Let it kind of brew as a trilogy for a while. So initially, 3 was not Tara. It was not Jed. It was not, that wasn't the idea at all. It was a similar story, but when I got cold feet about, well, how far can we take this? I tried to find a way to go, okay, 1 and 2 don't really connect all that well, other than the flashback scene and the name Victor Cunningham. So when I did 3, it's, let's find a way to connect them a little more. So if you watch them back to back to back, you go, okay, I get what they did there. I get that 1 and 2 were sort of their own things. 3, 3 brought them together. You kill him, story's over. That was essentially what that was. So at this point, this series could be done the way it is. But if we see that the audience, the viewership goes up and up and up, if it would get distributed and get a bigger audience that way, if the streaming services, if they start to pick it up more, then we'll see. I think 4 is a definite possibility, but this could be it. It's just a trilogy of movies, and it's done. So I think it could go either way. I think it really depends on the feedback going forward. So
Yeah, I think watching them back to back to back is a really good way of doing it, because I did notice certain things that kind of follow over, and I like when filmmakers do that. I don't like when they just ignore everything that came out, like Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't like that they ignored part 2. You made it.
Yeah,
I
like part 2.
I think a lot of people now like it. I think maybe when it originally came out, I think it was like, but it was, you got to, if you shot it and made it and it's called part 2, you need to have somehow connect it. And I like that
I agree
you
completely.
connected 2 and, like 1 and 2 into 3. And I thought that worked well. How do you decide then because this is something I found interesting in here, is this. So she's the opening kill. So I found that, I'm like, why is, so was this some sort of foreshadowing to like part 3 maybe?
Oh, you mean just the picture?
Yeah, because this doesn't happen. And then,
Right.
and then she in the first film, if you haven't seen the other ones, you think she dies. And then it goes on to the girl that's on the back here. So it's how do you decide like who to bring back, how to bring them back, that type of thing.
Well, the picture was just the truth of the picture is we just took a picture in the hallway. That's all there was to that. That there was, I would love to craft a really deep story as to how that all happened. That was just, let's come up with a cool picture that may look kind of iconic, to put in that. I mean, this is just part of the production. When Grim Reaper was first assembled, Tara was not in it. The opening scene was, it went right into the credits, and then it was Jim O'Rear talking about the escape. He walked across the bridge, all of the stuff of Victor walking from the mental institution to the first kill, which was the guy in the garage, the guy in the purple shirt drinking the beer and all that. That was the first kill of the movie. But the movie started on credits, and what happened was it actually was put on YouTube, and the viewership was not good. And I thought, so I got into the analytics on YouTube, and you know it's interesting because you know you can see the little the view tracker or whatever, the attention, the audience retention, and you can see, okay, at this point at 2 minutes and 12 seconds you have a lot of attention, then down at, you know, 4:18 you've dropped, and then whoa, this scene here, it's way up here. And when you have the stuff on there, you can really see what is it about this scene, and this scene that people are really engaged in. They're skipping around. Why are they skipping around? And oh, but they landed here, here, and here. So what it was by starting on credits and then exposition, we didn't have that engaging of an opening. So what do? Well, let's start with a kill. Okay, good. Let's pick somebody who the audience likes. Tara. There you go. The audience likes Tara a lot. Opening kill with Tara, boom, audience engagement went way up. And when it went on its second launch on YouTube, the viewership was great. So I think it just needed a stronger opening scene. People turned it on. It started with credits and then a guy talking, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think online, you have to get people engaged quick or they tune you out.
Well, there's a formula that would normally be, yeah, you know, you have cute girl at the beginning get killed and then credits, right, and then the movie starts.
Right.
So yeah, you gotta have, there's that formula that unfortunately is in almost every slasher film, but it needs to be there.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, that version was only online for a really short amount of time. And because I think when I released it, maybe subconsciously, I knew that it wasn't the strongest way to open it because I didn't leave it up for hardly, and that version never come on DVD. It was never, you know, so I don't even really, I almost look at it like a trial run. We try it, like, oh crap, let's add a little more to it. So, you know, the version with her in it is obviously the official one. And you know, that one go on YouTube, I don't really count that as anything more than just a blip, you know, on the screen, you know. So
sure. Yeah. But, yeah, it's interesting of the characters that you want to bring back and then the other ones you don't, because you have, like, in, you know, in part 2 you have the female cop. They mention at the you know, at the end with her, they I don't want to give too much stuff away, but they mentioned stuff with her, but she doesn't come back in part 3. So well, is there
actually, well, we toyed with the idea of bringing her character back too. Jesse at that point in shooting part 3 was very, very, very pregnant. So there was no way of really incorporating her character. I mean, we could have done a voice thing, but then, you know, Darren and James and I talked about that. We've already got various voices on the radio and phones and stuff. We didn't want yet another, you know, you know, it's because it's like, how much of the movie do you want? You know, telephones and radios and things. So we just, that decision was made. And even on the day, we humored the idea of Jed's first beep on his phone being just a simple text from the Allison character. Like, hey, I miss you. I wish, you know, you would talk to me or whatever. So there was still something there. But because it didn't really pertain to the story in part 3, we said, nah, just forget it. You know, don't. But we did, there was more thought put into that maybe than what, you know. But she was a good character. She did a good job. Jesse Reed did a good job in part 2. So
yeah, I figured from with excuse me, with her character from 2 to 3 is that Caleb became a drunk. He, because of what happened in part 2, he quit the police force. And now he just kind of, you know, lives in a bottle, and that just the relationship just didn't work. So that's why she's not there.
Well,
you know, I don't think at times you have to answer everything. Like I had just watched all 3 Bad Boys movies, and I wondered in part 3, are they going to mention that the Will Smith's character was dating Martin Lawrence's, like, sister? Would that be brought up? Because this is supposed to take place like years later, and they do. It's like one line of him saying, "Oh yeah, you still don't like me because I broke up with your sister."
Okay.
So sometimes they mention stuff, and then sometimes they didn't. So in this case, it didn't really seem necessary. You could kind of see what happened between the two from one movie to another. You don't need, so I mean, having the text would have been fine, would have been perfectly fine. I mean, you just look at the phone and be like, ugh, and just puts it down and grabs the bottle or whatever, or just don't answer it at all, you know.
Well, the picture of his dad on the desk when he's younger and in uniform and all that, you know, originally there was a whole backstory about the reason that Caleb is as downtrodden as he is after part two, the Reaper, you know, obviously opens the eyes and all that at the end of part two, that he come back to the police station, killed the police force off, with the exception of Jed and then Jesse, who was in the hospital. So therefore, the dad character would have been killed by the Reaper, giving Caleb even more reason to go into this sort of dark state. But then, see, there again, it overcomplicated Grim Reaper 3 with more backstory and more things that it didn't really need. Because ultimately, even though Jed and the Caleb character are important in 3, Grim Reaper 3 is about Bethany. So I think that ultimately it's like you could throw so much in that it just muddies it up too, you know. But you know, there's a million ideas you talk about, and not all of them make it to the screen.
Right. Yeah, and I noticed that that the Reaper doesn't seek her out in either film.
No.
Is that so when she's in the shower at the beginning of the first film, it's the dog that attracts the Reaper,
right.
And then she comes to the door, and then the Reaper comes in. And I would even say for part 3 is, I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think he looks for her. He sees her on the street on the date. Something, you know, and then it's like, oh, I remember her, and that's why he goes after. Otherwise, he's just wandering around killing people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that, you know, if he has all these victims and she didn't, like you said in the first one, that it's just you know, he's nuts. The noise got him distracted. He sees her, boom, she's the first victim. There was no more to it than that. And that was the thought, is, you know, with 3, then, you know, if we're going to bring her back, she's not like the object of his, you know, desire as a killer. She just happens to be in the same town that he's in now. And, you know, and he's like, just like you said, oh, I remember her, you know, and so he goes after her just, you know, just by, and I think that's, you know, kind of a Halloween thing, you know, if you look at the original continuity, you know, in the first Halloween, you know, no real, you know, significance to Laurie Strode and Michael Myers together. She was just one of several, you know, but then in 2, they add the sister element in, so that becomes important. But then in 2018, they retcon that, which, although a great movie, I still have problems with the fact that they retconned that many movies. I don't like when they do that. But with that said, in those, she's not really all that more than just, yeah, I tried to kill her years ago and I didn't, you know, she's not like what he's going after.
That's what I find funny with
movies.
Yeah, with Halloween, you know, with the new one, that in the first one is the girls are on the street and one of them yells, you know, speed kills, and the car goes to a stop, and he notices them. And then that's what attracts him. Otherwise, if they didn't say anything, he would have just driven by. And then when you do the new Halloween, I don't think he has any idea who Laurie Strode is. It's the doctor that drops him off at her house. And Laurie, it's so egotistical. And she, you know, she's such a narcissist to think, oh, well, Michael's only been thinking of me. Michael's going to come after me. Why? Why? You were nothing to him. And it's only when he's dropped off.
And I think that although they wanted to, you know, get back to the roots and all those sort of things, I think that almost takes some of, although I think the new three are in their own ways, I like all three of them really well. Um, it almost diminishes some of that emotional conflict there, because if she would have been the sister and all this and had the experiences of part two, being chased around and again in a hospital, and then again 20 years later at the college, and then thrown off of a roof and all those things like in Resurrection, I would buy the Lori more with a shotgun and targets and a life in this compound, because my God, she's been through it four times before. And you go, this woman is just gone, over this situation. I almost think they took some of the emotional, resonance out of that by eliminating those other movies, because now you're expected to believe that one night 40 years ago, that this situation, although horrible and would mess you up mentally, 40 years go by and she's toting a gun like Sarah Connor and all this. It
Right.
just, to me, that was too much of a stretch. All they had to do was, no, Halloween Resurrection is not a great movie at all, but show her fall off the roof, put Jamie Lee back in a brown wig like they did in part two, show paramedics, my God, she's on the, she's fell, this and that, show a stab wound. They get her, stable, cut to a card that set from Resurrection's date to now, and just move on. Like, no, was it a great movie? No. But if you make a good movie that people want to watch, it's a good movie, whether it referenced those or I don't know. That irks me with that series, because it's like, yeah, 2018 is a great movie, but Halloween 2 from 81 was a great movie. So, and they got rid of the importance of those films, and so I don't know. I just kind of have mixed thoughts on that.
Pardon me. Oh, so do I. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, thanks to Halloween H2O, you can very much bring back the Reaper. They cut Michael Myers' head off and
Sure.
made an excuse of who it was.
Yeah,
So,
it's a crushed larynx. Yeah, which was
yeah. So maybe you're the Reaper that's the end of part 3 isn't Cunningham,
There you go. It
or
was
he's where you add in some weird alien or spiritual or something like that, to where he could just take his head and put it back on, and it like.
yeah. We've Hey, John, I hate to do this. Can I run to the restroom real fast?
Oh yeah, sure.
I know that's not professional at all of me, but I've had way too much coffee. Is that okay?
It is fine. Yeah, I'll entertain
Okay.
the viewers until you come back.
Okay, I will come right back.
So, guys, if you have not seen James's films, you can catch them on YouTube, at the Moonlight Films, and everything that he's made is there. So you can watch Grim Reaper 1, 2, and 3. Part 3 is there right now until it becomes available, for like physical copy. You can catch the Blood Cove. You can catch those. The Maker of Monsters. You can check out that. Fangs. Everything is on YouTube. So definitely, I'll put a link down below to where, you guys can catch these. I do recommend, of course, purchasing the movies. It helps independent filmmakers, and these have, awesome covers on them. And that includes, the Blood Cove films. So, and this, I like that this guy's got he's got like the skull mask. Once again, sorry for my coughing. Like I said, it's my allergies, and it's just freaking killing me. And I'll mention this when he comes back. But if you look back there is a framed picture of Blood Cove, and then right below that is a framed picture of looks like the Grim Reaper. So we'll check. Yeah, I'll ask him about that when he comes back. So, but yeah, please, continue to support independent filmmakers. nobody sets out to make a bad movie. Everybody sets out to make a good movie. And but sometimes they're good and sometimes they're bad. And the things that I have watched from, the films I've watched from James have been really good. And so I think that you should definitely check them out. And there he is. He's back.
I am so sorry. I feel very rude doing that.
No, it's completely understandable. And I was just plugging your movies and everything. So while you were gone. So it's no, I'll tell you, when I was interviewing Drew Marvick, if you watch, because it's like a 2-hour interview, if you watch, I mean, maybe like 90 minutes in, you could see me doing this. And it's because I have to pee so bad. But Drew was on a roll. He was just talking and just explaining and going on. I'm like, I don't want to interrupt him because he's just moving. He's just going. So I'm just like, that's great. That's okay. Okay. And
yeah.
I think it was like it was just like when I okay, goodbye everybody, and I like raced to the restroom.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I did notice when you left, though, you have on behind you there, it looks like a framed Blood Cove, and then below that a framed Grim Reaper. So what are those?
Yeah, those are just the original paintings that Paul Spangler did for each of the movies.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so he's
done
a great job for us. I wish that I could have Paul do every film cover for us. And then, of course, up here I've got, I don't know what you can see, but like there's some films, and then
Flesh Eaters. I still want to see Flesh Eaters.
Yeah, that's one of the ones from that's being distributed by SRS, Ron Bonk and SRS Entertainment. So that's that, and then the let's see.
Yeah, I want to pick that one up.
Yeah, there's the Maker of Monsters, which is still one of my personal favorites. I've got that, and of course my Roger Corman, Edgar Allan Poe films, which I love there, and I've got all my Jaws stuff down there.
Oh wow!
Anyway, but then there's old.
Oh yeah, like the that's
Amicus.
Yeah, they got great stuff.
Yes, I've got that, and there's just more stuff sitting around this room. Kind of, I'm not going to show this side. Like I said, we've been remodeling a couple rooms.
Trancers too.
Oh yeah, I've got I'm a big Full Moon fan too. I wish I had time to watch movies, but someday, right?
Yeah. When you retire, there you go. So maybe,
yeah.
It's funny that you have your Roger Corman collection there, because the credits for 1 and 3 I thought was very Corman influenced. That if you watch his older films, they have that animation for credits, and which is very cool looking. It's very kind of German-esque looking credits, and I thought, and I went, oh yeah, his James's credits kind of remind me of Roger Corman. So it's I love Roger Corman.
Subconsciously, I hadn't thought of that, but I love Corman stuff. The Poe movies are a personal favorite.
Oh, they're great. I still think he's the greatest thing to ever happen to film. I mean, it's without Corman, we wouldn't have so many stuff, and it's filmmakers, writers, actors. I mean, just how to make movies. I mean, he was the guy who created I'm going to make one big movie, and then I'm going to shoot like 2 or 3 small movies on the same set, type of thing. Kind of like what Universal was doing. And he did it all the time. And it was very smart.
And has changed with the times like nobody else. It's like period pieces were in vogue, make period pieces. But, roadsploitation movies were in vogue, make that.
Right.
Rubber monster, rubber suited monster movies are popular in the late 80s into the 90s. Do that. Like, he adjusted really well to what was in style, So,
Yeah,
but
I think he's just great. So, well, when I was looking when you were gone and I was holding up all of your films that I have here, how do you figure? So you're going from Blood Cove to Grim Reaper, or when you're writing one of them, let's say like a sequel, are you going like, oh
mhm.
crap, I did that murder in this one, so I can't do that. I got to do something else. Do you worry about that? Do you think about that in the writing process?
I mean, I'll be honest. When it comes to Grim Reaper, those were made a little more specifically for YouTube, because when with keeping the costs low, the idea was keep the costs low, hopefully see a solid return with each one. And unfortunately, YouTube has become so strict with their guidelines, because if you do anything outside, that's initially where uh when Blood Cove was pitched to SRS, was YouTube would not allow revenue on Blood Cove or Blood Cove 2. So these movies were sitting there getting good viewership, and they weren't making any money because the content was deemed too extreme in Blood Cove and Blood Cove 2. So we were really conscious of that when doing Grim Reaper, that no, well, yeah, we can do a lot more creative kills. Darren's a master of the gore, and we can crush heads and we can rip arms off, and we know how to do all of it and make it look convincing for the budget we've got. With that said, you get too creative and bloody and gory, YouTube kills your revenue, and there you are. So we looked at the Grim Reaper trilogy as almost like these were made for TV slasher movies. So the kills were all a little more tame, because we knew if we pushed it too far, YouTube would kill the revenue, and then you would have kind of wasted your time you know, on for a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, YouTube is not the end all be all, but when it is the main source of your revenue,
Right.
you can't continually make movies that do not earn revenue, because that's where the majority of our budget comes from. So
Yeah, they don't make sense to me. They just don't make sense
no.
because when for I had and it was unlisted Meat Hook 4, which does have nudity. And
Mm-hmm.
it
In the
sat
code. Yep.
unlisted for years. And all I wanted to do was change something in the description box, because I would give that link to people to, like, if they wanted to review it, I would give them that link.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, when I changed one thing in the description, all of a sudden, boom, take it down. You have to take it
Yeah.
down. And
Yeah.
it was like, but it's unlisted. Nobody could see it.
Right.
And they
Right.
actually shut down my and because I argued with them. They said if you want to, contest this, you can. Well, my contesting it led to them shutting down the entire channel.
Yeah.
Which was ridiculous. Nobody was watching this. So yeah, so now I'm very, I'm conscious of what goes up. I do swear a lot on my channel because that's just who I am. But it's yeah, that's why AXEMAS doesn't have any nudity. There is some swearing in it, but not a ton. And
Yeah.
but one channel like Kings of Horror, no problem at all with the AXEMAS stuff, none.
Yeah.
But another channel said they had to edit it because they kept getting flagged. And so I said,
Yeah.
then take it down. And they're like, yeah, but you're not going to make money from it. I said, I don't care. People are giving this a bad review because it's chopped up. Like it does,
Right.
the movie doesn't make sense. So take it down.
Right.
And I threatened them, with copyright. And
Mm-hmm.
they did take it down. But it was weird that unlisted, bad. One thing, Kings of Horror, okay. This other channel, not okay.
Like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Be consistent.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's if you look at the Blood Coves and what come before Blood Cove. I don't remember now. Maker Monsters, that the language wasn't too severe, but especially in Blood Cove too, the language did get kind of bad. but if you look at the more recent stuff, the language has been cleaned up quite a bit. And I wish we could have done, and we considered that. Well, let's just shoot a kill and then turn around and shoot it again and do a gory version for the DVD. You know, do a more graphic version. But then it's like,
Sure.
you know what? No, just let's not. You know, because we just did Flesh Eaters. That's very gory and gooey, you know, and then Blood Cove 2, we had the head crushed and all the things. And it's like, you know, not every film has to be a bloodbath. You know, I think that, you know, I mean, and that's the thing, is you never know, you know, what people are going to like and what they're not. Some people are gore hounds and other people are like, no, I don't care. I love horror, but I don't love the gore. So you don't know. You have no idea everything's a gamble, what people are going to like.
Right. So for like the Grim Reaper stuff, then having a good looking girl in the shower, you're not
Right.
seeing, we didn't get nudity. And that's, you're thinking more YouTube in that type of case, or is it I just don't think that the nudity, the like gratuitous nudity, is really needed.
I wouldn't have added it, and even if YouTube was like, yeah, full steam ahead, put whatever you want in, we're going to monetize the hell out of it. I still wouldn't have, just because I'm not comfortable with that on it's. I think that, because you got to remember too, a lot of these people are my good friends. I grew up with them. I'm like, hey, take your shirt off. You know, it's like it's just not, that's not in me to. I mean, I'm not judging other filmmakers. Do whatever makes you happy, and as long as everybody's cool with it, you know, then go for it. But it's just not really for me personally with my stuff. And not only just the nudity, there's certain topics I wouldn't handle, or certain elements, you know, that you might see, anything, you know, like sexually violent and things. I would never put that in my stuff, just because it's just not something I'm comfortable with making a film, you know, include. You know, I've watched films where they've had scenes and it's like, okay, it's, again, it makes you uncomfortable, and that's the point, you know, but I'm not going to not watch it because of an element that's, you know, maybe controversial or whatever. But just, you know, for my own stuff, I try to just, I don't know, maybe be a little more cleaned up, I guess.
There are certain things that are uncomfortable. Rape is one that is not
Right.
a,
Right.
you know, it's kind of tough to get through, like the I Spit on Your Grave movies. And
Right.
I'm a big fan of Red Letter Media that's on YouTube. And whenever
Okay.
they pick a movie and it has rape in it, they're always like, you know, why do we have to have this in it? Like, they're very much against it. But then I did notice in Grim Reaper 1, you do address domestic violence. So the film does have a message.
Well, and that's bizarre, because you know, I did not realize that. I think 3 times now I've had, and I'm not sure. It's not something that's like, ooh, I want to put a message of this necessarily. It just kind of comes out, and I don't know, but you know, I've had 3 female characters now that were in some sort of abusive relationship and escape it, and at the end, they're not saved by a man. They save themselves. You know, there may be a man involved in part of, you know, like in Demoniac, you know, Mark Dessauer's character is coming to save Katie Harberger's character, but she gets herself out, you know, and I'm not sure what that is, because I'm not trying to put a message in it necessarily, but it has come out. But you know, 3 times now that I've noticed in our stuff, it's like, oh, this was, so I have no idea. I guess it's just something somewhere deep inside. I've got this, you know, I don't know, to show these characters that can overcome, you know, because I have no idea. I have no idea. I
Well,
have
yeah,
no, and we've talked, James and I talked about that extensively one time, and I'm like, I have no idea why that has materialized as many times as it has.
because
But
women aren't weak. You know, that's the
right,
thing.
right.
I'm not a social justice warrior. I'm not. I'm not woke. I don't agree with any of that type of stuff. But I do love seeing women kicking ass, and women can defend themselves. And so
Sure.
there's, I don't think that you should
Right.
have to show them. I mean, James Cameron is considered to be a misogynist, but yet look at all of his female characters. They all kick ass.
Yeah,
They
which
don't
is
need help
nuts.
by
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's, but yet he's criticized for that type of stuff. And it's just like, no, I mean, AXEMAS 1 and 2, Sarah kicks the butt of, she sets Drew Marvick on fire, she cuts the head off of another guy.
Yeah.
Medium 4, Mindy is
Sure.
in there, and she's beating up people and
Yep.
stabbing them, and all this type
Right.
of stuff.
And she's
And
great.
yeah, and she did,
Yeah.
she did a great job. And it's like,
Yeah,
I don't
she's very
know.
good.
I don't think I do it intentionally either. I don't, just like I don't cast, oh, this person's white, this person's black, this person's Asian.
Right.
It's
Right.
whoever can do. Now, I do have to admit, in AXEMAS, I did want to have like a black couple. That I will admit, because the movie was so incredibly white that it's just like, I got, no, this just doesn't seem right. It doesn't look right to me. While,
Right.
but we did have like the guy who gets killed at the beginning is Asian. And then, so it's, there are in some cases where I might go, well, let's use this person or that person. But for the most part,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
whoever does the best job. But it's, I think I'm on the same
Right.
thing with you, is that these things aren't, because I did find it funny in part 1, is with what happens to, like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but what happens to the abusive boyfriend, our main character doesn't care. She just
Right.
calls him an asshole and leaves. So
Right.
it's
Right.
it's almost like she should have been like, thank you, Mr. Grim Reaper.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think in a way there was probably some relief in that moment, that it's like, well, he's gone. I don't have to deal with that anymore.
And you couldn't have
but
picked a better actor. He might have been, maybe he's the nicest guy in the world, but which are normally the people who play abusive people, in films. But man, you picked a good guy to play that character.
And Grant's a sweetheart. He's a really good guy, and he's a good friend, and was uncomfortable to grab her by the shoulders and pull her kind of close, because that dialogue was written, I mean, admittedly a little more graphic toward her than what he actually said. And because they only had 2 scenes together, I really wanted to drive it home that he was like really just a despicable, character. But when I called action and Grant did his version of it, he cleaned it up a little bit more. And I thought, no, it still has the power that it needs to get the point across, But when we were rehearsing, I said, is it okay to grab your shoulders? And she laughed. She's like, yeah, grab my shoulders. And I kind of explained to them what I was thinking in this. And I was more verbally, I guess, abusive in my, like, the rehearsal version than what he was in the take. But I was happy with what he did with it. I thought he brought enough to it, that it worked. But I really wanted to make him this horrible bastard, so I'm like, but I thought they both did a good job in that.
Yeah, and it's I think that it's an important issue, because it actually does go both ways. I was in a very bad relationship for 3 years where the roles were reversed and I was the one being abused. And so even seeing a woman getting abused, I can relate to it in some sort of way. And so it's an important issue, but you don't need to go, I spit on your grave with it. That's
right.
Because it is really tough to get through it. And you could do it more subtly like you did and still get that point across. She leaves, we see him wake up, he takes the giant bottle of booze that's almost gone, and starts taking a swig out of it. And I'm like, uh-oh. And without even knowing, what he was, I had a feeling, if this guy's drinking right when he wakes up, there's a problem. And we see her with the black eye. She's putting like the makeup on.
Right. Well, and you know, I think subtlety, sometimes you can get your point across too. And sometimes when things are left to the imagination, you can, you know, you create more in your imagination sometimes than what you could even put on camera. You know, just like in you know, Fangs, which is a really popular movie in our catalog. You know, it's like and you know the scene. Have you seen Fangs, the vampire movie?
No, I still need to. I need to see, like, I think half your films. So I've watched
Okay,
some of them,
well,
but not all of them.
oh, that's okay. Some of them don't watch. They're not worth
Ah,
they're not worth watching. But Fangs is a really popular one, and there are two scenes in that that are, you know, they're sensual scenes, and we've gotten quite a bit of praise for one of the scenes in particular, and it doesn't show anything. I think it's the way, and we shot it one time, and I slowed it down a little bit, and it worked really effective given with, you know, with what we, because I have two really talented actresses in the scene, you know, and I think sometimes you can do more, you know. It's a, you know, don't show as much, you know. It's a, you know, with stuff, and people can fill in the gaps on their own, you know.
right. You want in two films as an example, Thing from Another World and John Carpenter's The Thing. And
Mm-hmm.
Thing from Another World, it's 1950s. It's got all these
Right.
allegories, you know, and communism, things like that, and Cold War. But you don't see anything. It's
Right.
just like the monster is just knocking down doors and knocking people over
Right.
and stuff like that. And then in Carpenter's Thing, it's just an effects fest. Like, I cannot
Right.
imagine
Right.
that movie without those effects. And it
Right.
would not work, you know, without those effects in it. So I think that it depends on what you're going with. When we did Meat Hook 4, the film's called Meat Hook Massacre. I
Right.
wanted to show a massacre, and
Right.
we did. So I wanted it to be as bloody as hell. But if I ever get to make Ghoul, it's not. It's going to be more in the shadows, you know, off camera,
Sure.
more
Right.
creepy. And so it just depends on what you want to do.
Well, yeah, I think that's a lot of it is, you know, is, you know, with even with you know, the look of things, you know, we've used day for night, you know, not out of necessity, but because it fit the style of that movie, you know, like Flesh Eaters was supposed to be a throwback to, you know, cheesy drive-in, you know, grindhouse films, you know. And so Day for Night was used as a deliberate, you know, decision. It's like, shoot Day for Night, because a lot of old movies used Day for Night, the blue filter and all that to look, and it doesn't look like nighttime necessarily, you know.
Rarely does
But
it.
sure. But it's like, but it was a style, you know, and I think even stylistically, you know, like you said, one movie you may do where it is more shadowy and more suspense. And, you know, I'm finishing up Graveyard Stories 3 right now. And the other day I told Darren, I said, there's hardly any blood in this damn thing, because we've been so used to throwing blood around and people getting stabbed for the past 3 years. It's weird to do a film now where it's like, yeah, there's a strangulation and there's a shadow over there, and it is weird because it's like, this is not a gory movie, you know. And so it's strange when you go from film to film like that, how it's like, yeah, it's a horror movie, but it's totally different, you know. Sometimes, you know, certain things overlap, but
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, and
I'm random.
oh, no, and you're like Day for Night example. I mean, everybody does it. The beginning of Jaws is Day for Night. You
Yeah.
could clearly
Right.
it's clearly Day for Night,
Yeah.
but it's so effective in what it does is you don't
Yeah. Right.
think about it. So it just matters how you do it and how well the scene is that you're using it in, that you can kind of just ignore it. It's like, oh, okay, it was a great scene.
Right.
You know, so what?
Well, and the Grim Reaper movies being shot primarily, except for the very last scene in the first movie, and the last scene in the second movie, and the last couple scenes in the third movie, they're all set during the day. But that was a choice too, because some of Blood Cove, especially 2, was at night. You know, you had the whole back end of Blood Cove 2 was after dark, you know. And but with these, that was trying to capture a style. This was going more for a Camp Blood, Friday the 13th kind of a vibe. So you shoot it during the day. Your killer's in the woods in the middle of the afternoon. That's the style, you know. So
I love horror films that take place during the day. I think that what you're seeing coming at you is scarier than what you can't see. I mean, if you got some guy with an axe running straight at you and it's noon, that to me is scarier than just somebody coming up to you in the dark and killing you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, you know, there's both. I think it kind of depends on how you approach it. But I think with these, you know, to me, they're not scary. They weren't really meant to be scary. They were meant to be a type of movie. That's what they were meant to be. You know, I mean, no, we could have spent, you know, more days and had things more in shadows and more artsy shots, and they weren't supposed to be. They were supposed to be during the day, you know, throwbacks. That's what they were. You know. So
well, that's why I like the one shot in part 3 where Caleb sees the Ripper in broad daylight in the town, and he's just turning the corner into the alleyway.
Right.
And I really like that shot, and I'm just like, wow, that's ballsy for this guy to be walking around, you know, in broad daylight, you know, with a weapon and blood all over him and stuff. And so, like I said, I think that's scarier. I mean, if you're seeing this guy just turning that corner and you're like, what the crap? And it's 12 noon.
Right.
That's like, what is this dude doing? And
yeah,
now what I do find, I'm sorry, I do find it funny though, in all horror movies, when somebody's wearing a costume and it's not Halloween, they all do the same thing. Hey man, it ain't Halloween. That was like 6 months ago. What are you doing, moron?
Oh yeah,
I would run.
Yeah,
if I saw some
you
guy
can
come
always
up to me,
rely on that trope.
I would
Yeah.
take off. I wouldn't even question why that guy's
No
wearing a
kidding,
Halloween costume in May. You know, I would just run. I've seen way too many horror movies.
Yeah, horror characters. I mean, you hate to say that, but a lot of times they're kind of dumb. So,
yeah. Well, okay.
but
So here's bring up dumb, and I'm not implying that any of the actors are dumb, but I was curious about this. Excuse me. So somebody like Joe Sherlock likes his big women. All of his movies, David Sterling and I have even talked about this. He loves his big women. In these 3 films, and I forget if in Blood Cove, you have a lot of big guys. Is that intentional? Like getting somebody big, or is it just once again, oh no, they're good actors, they just fit the part?
no, they're just friends and talented people we like working with, and you know, no, that's not, you know, there's no like, you know, thought put into that part of it at all. No.
Okay.
They're just good guys.
Okay. So there was at no point where you would say, I can't have you play this role, you're too big, or you can't have this role because you're too thin.
Well, I think certain body types and certain personalities or looks. I mean, I'm 5'8". You know, I would never cast myself as a pro NBA player. You know, I mean, it's just I mean, things like that. So no, I think that sometimes, you know, no, there's people that fit different roles. I mean, like you said earlier, you know, you pick the most talented people you can for each part. But there are times when it calls for somebody of a certain body type or a certain hair color or a certain age. And it's not being prejudiced against anybody else. It's just that's the character. You fit that character or you don't. And there's, you know, you kind of have a balance there. But as far as that goes, no, that none of that was like, oh, we need somebody here who's, you know, a little heavier or a little thinner. No, that's just.
What about young actors versus older? Because you do have in your film older actors, like the woman who's jogging, who gets the cramp out of nowhere, which I thought was kind of funny. Yeah. And then you have the woman who's painting, you know, these are older people, or even the woman in part 3 that runs that kind of like art a business building. I'm not really sure what you would call
Yeah,
those
the
things.
gallery, yeah, our gallery, yeah.
Yeah, and so
There
these
was
are
more. There was more in the original script about the gallery, and that got dropped due to time.
oh,
um,
okay.
we had a couple scenes to develop the two of them together more that didn't make it because of time. So, sorry, I've got a eyelash or something bothering me
I
here.
get that all the time. So are
But
the
well,
were
I got
these
contact, so that
so like was the woman in that like art gallery, was she like the owner, or did she work there and you're like, hey, how would you like to be in a movie, or did you seek somebody out
oh
that
no, no,
age?
no, that's Patty Danner, and she's a very talented writer and a talented actress and just a good friend. And Patty is someone who has been really instrumental in the success of a lot of the recent films because she may offer up locations or all the masks in the film that she carries from the basement up to the desk and all that. She hand painted all those for Grim Reaper 3. She said, hey, I'd love to learn how to do paper mache masks. Do you have a reason to put those in the movie? And I'm like, well, I can find, this is a little thing. They're not going to be a focus. And she's like, oh, I don't care. So she took it upon herself to make all these masks and things. But the other two, the lady jogging is Rebecca Elder is her name, Becky, and she's a friend of Darren Morgan's, the effects guy, and she approached him a number of years ago. Hey, I love your stuff. If you ever need me in anything, and they were, they worked together. And then Vicky Boo, who plays the artist in part two, she wrote me and she's like, hey, I'm in the next town over. I love your stuff.
Oh,
I'd love to be part of it. So sometimes it's as simple as that. Or then there are people like Tara and Autumn Hall and like Tyler Fiskus and from part two with the overalls with the flask, that guy. These people were friends growing up. That have just moved. As time has gone on, they've stayed with it. So just but it's all part of that same team.
yeah, it's interesting with the older actors because it's a lot of people are, oh, violence, how could you, oh, I would never do anything like that. And then but young people are like, yeah, make me a zombie, or I want to die in your movie or something like.
Right.
So to hear
For
older
sure.
people
Sure.
contacting you I think is pretty awesome because because now you have that demographic. You got the younger and the older demographic going
Right.
with you.
I as a viewer, I like movies that have older characters in them. It's like, it's a weird example, but like, really off track, but like the Notebook, I love James Garner and Jenna Rollins. So to me, when I've not seen that in years, but when my wife and I used to watch that was my favorite part of the movie, was the older characters, even though the younger two were the poster people. They were the young and beautiful characters, and they're great actors as well. But sometimes I like the older actors in films, like with Halloween. Donald Pleasance is my favorite part of that movie, and I mean Jamie Lee's wonderful favorite part of that movie, and I don't know. I like older actors sometimes in the films. I mean, just as much or more sometimes as the younger. But I think a balance, to use the word balance, that's I think that's a good point, is try to find a balance there of ages. Um,
Yeah,
so
I think that's Hollywood doesn't do as, I think they should do more with older people, and I don't say that just because I am older, but it's yeah, when James Gardner's like, and Gina Rollins are two of our best actors. I mean, it's
yeah,
it was sad when James Gardner died. I mean, he's been my favorite for
I'm sure.
decades, even when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
And I
he's
didn't know his
great.
name. It was just like, oh, it's that
Right.
guy. I like that guy.
It's
And
Rockford.
yeah,
Yeah,
Rockford Files. That's what I used to watch when I was a kid. Yeah.
yeah, sure.
And so it's a shame that that there isn't, they're not tapping that anymore, or at least not as much. So
Yeah.
speaking of casting, there's a connection to all three films that I'm not sure if you're aware of. So you have James O'Rear in the first one, you have Scott Tepperman in the second one, and then you have me in the third
Uh-huh.
one. We're
Right.
all connected to Cruel Summer. which is the James,
Okay.
yeah, and Scott
Okay. Yep. Yep.
film.
The
And
Los Bastards. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so
Cool.
yeah, and then of course, I just said his name, now I'm forgetting it. The actor from part 2 that I just mentioned. Scott Tepperman. Thank you. Yeah, Scott Tepperman. God, that's the worst thing about getting older. You could say the person's name and then 2 seconds later forget it. And then Scott is in Meat Hook 4.
He's the dad. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, he's religious dad, as he is called, because I like
Yeah.
I like naming people what they are. So like Mark Justice at the beginning of AXEMAS 2 is angry dad. So Mark's like, yeah, I don't have a name.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, your name is Angry Dad.
More often. I'm like, your name was Kevin. It's like, well, the name wasn't even said, but I give you a name, you know. But
well, I'm guessing you did this, and what were your feelings on naming characters after famous, like, horror directors, Carpenter, Landis, you know, that type of thing?
We do that frequently, or like the first movie, you know, Polonia Memorial Hospital, you know, after Mark Polonia, and then in the first one too, you know, Sheriff Sterling, you know, that's C.A. McGregor plays Sheriff Sterling, which is a shout out to Dave Sterling, you know. So I mean, you know, even, you know, and there's a in one of the films, there's Bethany Curtis, Jamie Lee, you know, Curtis, the Joe Sherlock's in there somewhere, but I don't know what movie it is. There's a somebody with a Sherlock, and it's I don't know if it's one of these.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Yeah, one of them. It's. I know one of the characters. His name is Bambi, which I thought was funny. But yeah, it was something like, and I don't know if this is correct, but I'll just use that as an example. Like the cops are talking, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Bambi Sherlock didn't get home last night." It was something like that.
Yeah, something like I don't remember, but I know Joe's in there somewhere as a shout out to Joe too. And again, you know, you would have to be, you know, obviously, into that stuff to get that connection, you know, but you know, the guys that like this stuff, guys and gals, that they're like, oh, cool, you know, Sterling or whatever, you know. And I had a review a while back pop up where somebody said, Polonial Memorial, that's funny, you know. So like they got it, you know, they got the reference, you know. But so anyway, but
the character that has David Sterling's last name, you should have given him a mullet. Because David has a mullet.
Dave does have, he has great hair. I should have a character with a mullet sometime.
Yeah, that's one of his trademarks, I think, is that he has the mullet. So it's he asked me at one point, he's like, should I cut my hair? I'm like, no, just leave it.
No, just leave it. No, hell, that's what you stand out, because you've got something, you know, that's sort of your thing, you know.
Since you know all these people, you're obviously a fan of a lot of these people, you put their last names into your movie. Do you have a bucket? Like, I have a bucket list. Do you have a bucket list of people that you would like to work with?
Most of them are dead. You know, growing up, you know, with all the Universal stuff and the Monogram stuff, so most of the people that I would, you know, obviously were passed on. But, you know, be honest, I don't think about that too much. I would have to give that some thought of people that I'm very fortunate that I've got to work with, you know, the Baltimore. I've, you know, went on and on about that in the last show, but getting to work with George Dover was really cool. And George has become a good friend through the years. Like I said, we had a phone call, you know, a couple of weeks back that was great, and just caught up and talked about all sorts of things. And so that was definitely a cool experience. And working with Lloyd, and it's neat because, you know, virtual has allowed us to work with so many people. I mean, I would never have John Ward in Grim Reaper 3. I would never have Mel Heflin in Grim Reaper 3 or in Graveyard 3. She's great, you know, and her role in Graveyard 3 is a lot bigger than her part in Reaper 3. And, you know, in Scott Taberman, and I'm sure there's people I'm forgetting here, but it's like a lot of these folks that we've got to work with and had these opportunities. If it weren't for the internet and being able to film your own stuff, we couldn't have that. So that's been a neat thing, to be able to do. So
yeah, Zoom is amazing, or whatever you use to do these with is just absolutely amazing. So it's I do
yeah,
acting out here in Vegas, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be able to, like you just said, Grim Reaper 3, I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, that's was just
right,
audio, but there would have
sure,
been really no way of doing this one Filmmaker. I wouldn't be able to do if it wasn't,
right, yeah,
for these type of things. So it's technology is just amazing these days.
I mean, technology can be a huge burden too, but when you
Well,
use it the
that's true.
best way you can, it's the internet's a wonderful tool.
Until Skynet takes over, and then we're all screwed.
Well, this is true, yeah, and then they're trusting that stuff way too much. But
So eventually it will happen. So as I'm sure. So
yeah, I hope I'm long gone by that point.
yeah, I think at my age, and I'm seeing the way that the world is going, it's just like, oh, I'm glad I'm my age. It's I don't
Yeah, it's a mess.
on both, not to get political, but on both sides, it's just a giant
Yeah,
mess. It's just, and there's where the internet is bad. It's that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
so, just I watched a documentary on like the lead singer of Linkin Park and then the lead singer of Soundgarden, and how they committed suicide, and they were like really good friends, and
Uh-huh.
the wives were being interviewed talking about how horrible the messages were, like on Twitter and Facebook and stuff, that conspiracy theories and stuff about the wives killing them to get money, and how disgusting it
Yeah.
was. And it's just like, my God, the guy just killed himself. A lot of it had to do with like depression and things. It's just,
Yeah.
that's where the internet is just bad. But then something like this is I think is perfect.
Well, yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, when you can, I mean, I made that a post the other day that was, I don't post anything political very often, but I made a point, which I believe it's like, is this really the best we can do with our political party? It's like, we're supposed to be the greatest country on earth. You have all these great people, and it's like, is this really the best we've got right now? Like, can we
Yeah.
not come up with someone better than who we have leading these parties? And I guess not, because we keep voting these folks into office. I don't get it, but no one cares what I think here in the middle of nowhere, Midwest. No one cares. But it's I think it's sad. It's just a sad thing. But
It's just better to stay away from all of that. And unfortunately, I learned about that the hard way, because I am very political, and it's hard for me to not say something. But I
right,
have learned to stay away from that, because I mean, all you got to do is just do one post and you'll get destroyed.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's, I mean, I made a post about Kathleen Kennedy. I can't stand her. And I think that she's destroyed Star Wars. And it was just,
hmm,
I mean, it was like a machine gun hitting me of all these
yeah.
people.
Oh,
And
yeah, Star Wars is very controversial. To be honest, I grew up with the first three, and then the prequels were coming out as I was growing up, so I saw all three of the prequels in the theater, and I've seen the first of the sequel trilogy, The Force Awakens, in the theater. And then, to be honest, I've seen the other two of the new ones, but I don't follow it religiously anymore, and I just kind of lost interest. It wasn't any one big thing. I just, as a whole, I just kind of lost interest in the storyline. I'm not sure what. I have no animosity against it because I didn't follow it enough
well,
to
some of that
be
might be
that
that,
fascinated.
some of it could be that they're just so poorly written, that there's no plan,
Yeah.
that they don't keep your interest because there's no plan. So I mean, that's a whole other video. I mean, it's, but you get, you when I did this post, I mean, it was like you hate women. Oh, you're a misogynist. Oh, you're
Oh,
it's just like,
right.
no, I don't like her because she's not a good producer. She's a bad producer. There's a reason why Spielberg didn't do why he dropped out of Indiana Jones. I mean,
Well, yeah.
So
I don't follow her enough to know. I'll be honest, I don't follow a lot of big films anymore. I feel like a lot, I don't buy a lot of stuff anymore, but a lot of what I've bought in the last few years and what I thought is more micro budget than a lot of the big studio stuff. I don't know I don't know if I've just got so caught up in no budget filmmaking that I'm just not as interested anymore in a lot of the mainstream. But I mean, I still like a lot, but I don't watch hardly anything anymore. Anything current. So
you're probably better off not knowing what's going on. I mean, it's I have friends that are very like apolitical, and it could be politics or movies, and it's they're probably better off for it.
Yeah.
I won't watch things because of it.
When this is bizarre, but when I was a kid, I was fascinated with the presidents, United States presidents, and at like 5 years old, I taught myself as soon as I could read, I could name every president in order. I mean, I still can,
wow.
And it's useless to know that, but but to have that, I actually, when I was, I don't know, second grade, the principal at the school had me come on the intercom, and I recited the presidents off in order to the whole school. But but growing up and loving that part of history, I've always had a fascination with like the election process. So like now that the debates have started up again, even though I think it's horrible, I've been remodeling. I listened to the debate from the other night, and so because I still think the election process and our government is fascinating. It's just so screwed up,
Well, see, like you say it's useless to know all the presidents. I say it's not, because then
it's just that most people would be like, why do you care to know all the presidents in order?
You have someone like Trump who only recently went on the news and says Joe Biden is the worst president this country has ever had. Can you name every single president that we've ever had, and why is he the worst president that we've ever had? Can you name the achievements and negatives that each president has ever done? Because you're an idiot for saying that. Because he can't list all of them. But you can. You can legitimately say if Biden is a good or bad president, or Trump is a good or bad president. You can legitimately say that.
I don't know if either one of them are the best or worst. I mean, I've only lived through 5 or whatever, but I mean, you could go from your own lifetime or whatever, who you think, but there's a lot of ugly in our history. I mean, you read anything about Andrew Jackson, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, it's pretty bad, We
find out more and more about these people all the time.
Yes, and that's the thing, is like, I don't, no one's perfect. It's like, just because you have a political office, or if you're somebody who has an image to uphold, everybody's human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw things up. They're going to be in, but it's like, does everybody have to be corrupt? Does everybody have to be like, have all this negative stuff? Like, my God, can we not just get a little bit of normalcy back? And it just seems like it's impossible, to do that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like movies or books or art or whatever. I think it's, if you phrase it properly. Like if I sat there and said, this is the worst movie I have ever seen, there's a big difference between that and this is the worst movie ever made. I haven't seen every movie ever made.
Right.
So how can you say that?
Oh, I see that listed. People will say, this is the worst movie ever made. I'm like, you've not seen a lot of movies, because this is not the worst movie. People, some big studio film, or what, this is the worst movie ever made. Guys, come on. Like, this is not, I mean, come on. Hell, I've made worse movies than this. I don't know. But it's just, anyway, we're off topic.
Yeah, and I think that we're at that time, too. I think
What's that?
oh yeah,
Oh, okay.
we're actually at 2 hours. So and I know you have a family, so I don't want to keep you
Oh,
forever.
oh,
So
I didn't. No, I wasn't. I didn't mean that. I just, I felt like I was on a tangent about something that
oh
didn't
no,
pertain.
we well both of us were that have nothing to do with your movies. So, but it's I do have a tendency to veer off and other directions because of politics and things like that. So, government
That's
politics
why
and
all
movie
the Moonlight
politics.
films. Oh yeah, all of our when we get together to discuss, what should be a hour meeting, couple at the most, ends up being 4 hours, five, because half of it didn't have anything to do with with the topic at hand. But um, I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
I gave a good overview of these or not. I mean, I I don't know. I don't know if you had anything else specifically about them or um,
No, I mean I have so many notes we could probably go on for 4 hours, but I don't want to keep you forever. I mean we've answered a lot of the questions that
okay. I just wanted to make sure
have.
you
So
didn't turn the thing off and go, well, crap, there were, or if I didn't get to certain things you wanted me
no,
to, or
no, I always do more notes than that are needed just in case. Some
okay,
people like to
okay,
talk, which I absolutely love, and then some people don't talk, which I don't like. And then I got to kind of go through the notes to keep it going. So if I have
okay,
more notes here than I need, that's perfect. That's fine.
okay. Well, good. Well, good. I hope. I mean, just as far as the series goes, I hope people get something out of it. I did. This is weird. Which, and you may be interested in this. I don't know, but you know, I talked a little earlier about the Blood Cove movies being longer shoots and a little bit higher budgeted than what these were. What's strange though is on IMDb and Letterboxd, these are rating higher than the Blood Coves are.
Oh,
And it's strange because although I love different things about every movie we do, then there's things I kick myself in the butt for. We should have changed and things. It is interesting because I would have thought from that in that respect that the Blood Coves would have rated higher and been getting a little bit more positive feedback than these. And it's actually the opposite. So something's working with this series because it does seem to be getting a little bit of traction, and stuff and
that's good.
whatever. Because you can't control what people like. I did a slasher. The other slasher that we did is A Whisper in the Dark. Don't watch that. Don't
Ah,
watch that. But A Whisper in the Dark has either right at or just slightly over 2 million views on YouTube. And it's been our second or third biggest revenue earner since it's been on there. And for the longest time, I was like, oh, this cannot be our flagship movie. We've done such better
ah.
films than this. But you know what? If people like it and they were watching it, who am I to say what's good and what's not? Because if they're watching it, good. Let it earn its revenue, let it get its viewership, and so people like what they like. So
It's all subjective, and
sure.
I watched a film called Bigfoot's Bride, and it got horrible
Okay.
reviews, and I watched it because it got horrible reviews. I loved it, and I did a one filmmaker with the director, and it was, and I thought it was great. I really liked it,
Yeah.
but it has more bad reviews than good reviews. But I don't care. I liked it. It doesn't bother me at all.
My wife and I had a big conversation about that yesterday. Um, about like, when you grow up with certain movies or certain foods or certain whatever, it's like, like with in regard to film, not in relation to the Bigfoot movie, but you can look at something and go, I know objectively this is not a great movie, but for my money and for my entertainment, this is great. Like, like a weird example would be like you know, uh, Jaws 3. You mentioned Jaws earlier, and Jaws the Revenge. I
Love
know
Jaws the
that those
Revenge.
movies are not, yeah, I know that they're not as good as the first one. They're not as good as the second one, and I don't care. I grew up with those. I watched them right alongside the first one, like I did. So to me, Jaws: The Revenge holds just a special place in my heart as the first movie does. I know it's not as good, and I don't care, you know. So
Right.
because it still means something because I grew up with it and things. So it's so different than when, some movies just click with certain people and some don't. And that's what makes everybody unique and makes all films unique, you know? So,
Yeah, I mean, Jaws has its own history, which makes it very interesting. And Jaws: The Revenge has its own history that makes it
right,
interesting. And
right.
and knowing about the reshoots and the book and the original script that deals with voodoo and
Sure,
mobsters and
sure. And
why
drug
Michael
smuggling.
Caine
Yeah, yeah.
did the movie. I mean, to
Right,
buy a house.
right.
He missed the Academy Awards to go shoot that movie.
Yep,
And
yep.
that to me is fascinating. And so if somebody said, let's watch Jaws: The Revenge, I would be like, oh, really? I'd be like, sure, pop it in.
Yeah,
Let's watch it.
yeah. Well, Highlander too. I know that a lot of
I
people consider it awful. I love Highlander too. I think it's great.
I
You know,
yeah, I got right over it. You can't see because I got the one filmmaker thing up, but I have well, except for the TV show, which I really haven't watched. It's just the movies. But I
yeah,
have every movie here, and I have like
yeah,
three versions. I have like two versions of Highlander, three versions of Highlander 2. And
yep,
I have Highlander 2 on VHS because
yep.
that version is not,
Me
that's the
too.
theatrical one
Right,
that
right.
has
You can't get
never been released except for
right.
VHS.
Yep,
And
yep.
that's the one I love. I love
Yeah,
that version of the film.
yeah. My go to, and admittedly, is the special edition, the '04 special edition. But growing up with the Quickening version, that's the one at the video store that I saw first. So that one holds a special place in my heart. That version of that movie. So
Yeah, it's I I like that they're from another planet. I like that they're aliens. I like all that stuff. And I don't like that they changed it because now it doesn't really make sense. That it's
well,
Earth
I
in the
think
past. And
for that movie and that story, it worked just fine. When I watched the first one, I don't think about Zeist because it doesn't matter in that movie. It
right.
doesn't make any difference in the first movie, or in the third. I don't care either. But in that one, yeah, sure, why not? But
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I got to meet Sean Connery once when I was living up in Marin County. They were
wow.
reshooting one of the scenes from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And
Uh-huh.
Connery was there. It's the scene where they're fighting the two Nazis on the motorcycles, and Indy and Sean are in
Okay.
the
Uh-huh.
motorcycle. That's Marin County, and up like above the school. And my friend said they're shooting over here, and I had a Highlander poster, and I didn't have anything else with Sean Connery on it. And he went to go get a cup of coffee. I could hear him because the I guess the PA or whatever is like, Mr. Connery, we got to get to set. And he goes, just a minute, I want to get a cup of coffee. And he goes over, and it was like a Looney Tunes thing. There was just a little puff of air. I just immediately shoot over to craft services, and they don't try to stop me. I think they wanted to, but I had it folded perfectly. And I said, Mr. Connery, can I get you to sign my poster? And he goes, sure. And I'm like, I'm sorry that it's Highlander and not James Bond. And he goes, why? I like Highlander. And he wrote, best wishes, Sean Connery. And I'm just like,
Cool.
yes. That's so, which is why he probably did Highlander too. He
I
likes
know he liked
Highlander.
working with Christopher Lambert and Russell Mulcahy. I think he enjoyed that, and he
Yeah.
got paid a lot for only being there for what, a week and a half or something. So you
Yeah.
know
So
it's
yeah, it's
I love those. Yeah,
yeah, they're great. So see, we can have another whole 2 hours just talking about bad movies.
yeah, yeah.
Bad movies that we love.
Have me on for the Highlander one. Don't have me on for the Kathleen Kennedy one because I don't know. I have no real thoughts on that. But
As I'm sure they're when she was Spielberg's assistant, she probably burnt the coffee. It's I cannot I cannot stand her. I just I heard she's out because of Indiana Jones, that they're moving somebody else in. So I'm glad about that. But yeah, I can't stand her. I really can't. Well, I don't like Disney to begin
oh,
with. So I don't like anything
Yeah,
Disney's done.
I just don't. Yeah,
They've ruined everything. Marvel, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, everything's been ruined. So
yeah. See,
loved it all
I just
before
don't
Disney.
follow enough of it to know anymore. You know, with a lot of it, with I can hear my kids there. With the kids, there's just not a lot of time to watch anything, and what little time I do squeeze out, in the late part of the night, I'm back here editing, trying to work on my own stuff. So I just don't follow a lot of current things. Maybe someday I'll do my homework and catch back up. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I'll let you go then, because your kids probably want to be with you, and like I said, we could talk forever about this type of stuff. So, is there anything that you would like to plug? Anything else that you'd like to say before we take off?
I have a speech prepared now. Now, other than just check out our Moonlight Films Facebook page. We haven't been as active on there as normal. We're going through the process of updating the website, so the website's really behind. But the Facebook page is pretty up to date. The website's good. It needs updated. And then the YouTube page, I'm hoping to get back to more update videos and things, because there for a while I had done that frequently, a couple, 3 or 4 times a year, and lately I've not done those at all. But the next thing to look for is Graveyard Stories 3. That will be coming out sometime this fall. We had some editing snafus with that, but we've got that fixed and ready. So that one is probably 90% done. And that's been a real popular series online. And then next year, no sequels, nothing, no slashers, no sequels. We're doing some, I guess, more original stuff. No series installments, because this year 2023 has been Grim Reaper 3 and finishing Graveyard Stories 3. So we're getting back to some new ideas next year. Okay. So we'll be filming again in January and doing a winter based film. Hopefully we have creepy looking but mild weather, as not to shoot in extreme temps. But anyway, so always something going on here. It's a little slower, than it used to be, but we're still plugging along. So
That's good. That's great. That's good. Okay. Well, and I'll put a link down to the YouTube channel. I'll put that down in the description area. Okay. And then send me whatever links you want me to post along with it, so people know, where they can keep updated and get your films. Okay. Even Kanaki, that type of thing.
Oh yeah, I could put for the DVD store. Okay.
Yeah, because I still need to buy some stuff. So I don't have everything, and I do want to. I definitely want to see Whispers in the Dark. So
no.
Isn't there a sequel to that? Is there a part 2?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Unfortunately, there is.
See, you say this, and now I got to go watch it because of that. So those warnings don't work.
I would recommend Fangs. Of course, Maker monsters, but that you can't buy on Kanaki anymore, because SRS has both the Blood Coves and Flesh Eaters and Maker monsters. So those 4 aren't on Kanaki. But on the store, I would recommend Fangs. I'd recommend After Dark's a lot of fun. State of Mind is a cool little short film that we did. I like that a lot. Yeah, I would avoid A Whisper in the Dark like the plague. But
no, I gotta watch it.
Always, it's fun. There's a lot of fun to it. It's just it's very disjointed. So.
And you can see Grim Reaper 3 on YouTube, and it will come out physical soon. And then you can also watch Grim Reaper 1 and 2 on YouTube.
Yep, you can watch all 3 on YouTube. You can also watch them on the first 2 on Fright Night on Roku. I think they may be on Fearflix. That channel's split, so I'm not sure what went where. But Tim Wall does a great job with Fright Night, and he's got both the Reapers, both Graveyard Stories, and Fangs on there. So you can watch those on that channel as well. And then, of course, pick up our stuff at SRS. We've got those 4 movies I mentioned, and then there's T-shirts and posters available on there. So that helps the SRS out and us too. So
yeah,
any of that stuff's great.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, thank you. And can they get physical copies of Grim Reaper 1 and 2 on Kanaki?
On Kanaki, yep.
Okay.
You can get both of those, and at some point I may do like special edition DVDs. We get a slow period next year or something, but right now all the extra effort is being dedicated to getting Graveyard 3 finished and out the door. So
no Tubi?
No Tubi yet. That's actually something we are looking into. I've been encouraged by several filmmakers to get on Tubi, and a lot of that just comes down to time. I know that's sort of a commitment to get everything lined out for that. And it's unfortunate because there's been a couple things lately that I've had to turn down due to just not having time to do it.
Yeah,
so
I think
eventually,
Tubi isn't. Yeah, it's not that hard to get onto Tubi, I don't think. I mean, because you have Film Hub that will put everything out, and
right.
I was told, I didn't even know that AXEMAS 1 and 2 were on there. Somebody actually contacted me and said, "Oh yeah, they're on there." I'm like, "What?" And then I contacted Screamtime Films, Todd Cook, because he's my distributor, and he's like, "Oh yeah, they're up there," and I'm like, "Oh, where else are they?" "Oh, they're on Plex," and it's just like, "Oh,
right."
okay.
I knew they were getting around on quite a few services, so that's congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. So I think Film Hub is where most people are doing it to get their stuff on all the different streaming places.
Yeah, I have not taken the time to get on there. It's been like a zoo, I feel like, lately. So trying to just balance too many things, but hopefully soon we can get back into prioritizing that a little bit more. But anyway, we're still going strong. It's just a little slower than usual, but always working on something. So.
Okay, good. See, we could continue talking forever. So I'm going to say goodbye and thank you. I really appreciate it. Once again, thank you for letting me be part of your film world. I really do appreciate it. So, hopefully I can do something else.
Providing that part of the film, and then thank you very much again for having me on One Filmmaker, One Film.
Yeah, you're a twofer now. So I think the most I have is 4. I think that's Joe Lujan and Jack Hunter, I think, are at 4. So I'm trying to get other people to 2 to 3 and then up to 4. Right. Kind of like Saturday Night Live, they have those actors that host, and I think they're called something like the 25ers or something, or the 15ers. There's some number that, like Tom Hanks, Alec Baldwin, they've all been on something like 10 times, 15 times, and there's like a particular name for them. So I want that to be with One Filmmaker. I want there's the twofers, there's the threeers, and then there's like the fifthers. Do something like that. So,
okay. Oh, well, cool.
Yeah. So then we'll get you on a third time. So
all right. Well, let me know. We'll I don't maybe not any more sequels for a while, but there'll be something. Sure.
Well, you got older stuff and you got new stuff coming out. So there's always something.
Oh yeah, and Grim Reaper may live on. We'll just have to see how they continue to perform and what the interest is, and if people want more Victor Cunningham, we will be obliged to give the world more Victor
Origins.
Cunningham.
Grim Reaper Origins.
That's right. Yeah, my gut tells me we'll come back to it at some point, but probably not this next year.
Blood Cove meets Grim Reaper.
There we go. Yeah,
so you can have the Grim Reaper mask and the skull mask.
It would be hard to pull that off with the actors, because who plays what if they've been in this and now where are they here?
You pull a Kevin Smith and just have them play them and not worry about it. I mean, and it's stuff like Jay and Silent Bob, in Hollywood, what Ben Affleck plays like 3 characters. So it's why not?
Well, we've talked about that a lot too, about when you have when you work on a low budget and you have the people that you work with, at some point, if you do sequels like this, you're gonna have to start using people in different roles, because if not, and you don't expand your group a whole lot, you're gonna run out of people eventually to kill off. So
Yeah, there's
But
only so many times that one actor could be killed. So
right, right. So with these, it may be like the smaller roles might start getting bigger parts, but like Tara would not come back as a different character because that's going to be hard to, mentally go, wait a minute, wasn't she from here and here and now she's over here? Anyway, that's a whole different topic, but okay.
So, all right. So
So
there we go.
thank you very much, sir, for having me on.
Well, thank you, and thank everybody for watching. And this was a really fun one. And please watch all of James's movies. When you left, that's what I was telling people. Go watch your stuff. Watch stuff in order. Watch it, the Grim Reaper stuff in order, because that was really fun. I enjoyed that, because I've just done that recently with like Fast and Furious. I watched it in chronological order and it was great. So now I'm into watching films back to back to back, and I really had fun with this. So please, people, go watch it. It's on YouTube.
You can see the growth of something, Yeah,
and it definitely shows that you've grown as a filmmaker. So the different
good.
angles, different sound editing is getting up there. So it's
Sure.
Yeah, you can definitely see from the first film to the third how you've grown. So
Good.
And that's always interesting.
That's the goal, is not to go backward.
Right.
So.
Some filmmakers do, unfortunately. I don't want to name them, but they have, low budget indie guys have gone backwards. So
Or some series, you see how some series get stronger as they go, and other ones start to get and then kind of lose it again or whatever, and I don't know. I would almost argue. I'll leave you with this. I think from a production standpoint, I would agree. I think Grim Reaper 3 is probably the strongest as a production of the three movies. But I think all three actors that play the Reaper do great. Darren Morgan, Dalton Ewers, Alex Phipps, they're all great. And they each bring their own style, and each movie has something to offer, hopefully for everybody, who likes low budget horror.
Well, and when you grow and you could use a radio station, like a legitimate radio station, instead of just having a microphone in front of you, like on your kitchen table, like I'm doing, then you've known that you've grown as a filmmaker when you can actually use those real locations, and you've done that.
Yeah, that was a great opportunity to get to go do that. And he is the radio DJ, the host for that network. So that's an example of that worked great. He was, hey, come use it. So
yeah, that's great. So. All right, man. Well, thank you, James. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And this time I mean it. And thank you, everybody, for watching this. And I have a couple more One Filmmakers lined up. But I wanted to get to you first. And so this will be up shortly. So, bye, everybody.
All right. It was good talking to everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye.